Ahoy! The patch notes for the upcoming PTR for Season 4 are out, and there are quite a few very interesting things in here. I would say this is a very mixed bag overall. There are some very positive, interesting changes, and also, in my opinion, some very negative changes, so we'll talk about it. We'll begin with a quick overview of some fixes that I'm not going to go into because they're just fixes, they're whatever. The flashing screen thing should be fixed. I think that's a useful one. Certain glyphs not appearing in the right location. Various quest fixes here. Again, if you care about any particular one here, you can just pause quickly. But mostly it's just minor things. The first really important change, however, comes here with navigation. You now move at the same speed in all directions when not sprinting. So this is, I think, relevant in multiple situations. You may think, okay, well, I'm sprinting most of the time, so why would I care? On one hand, Roger pointed out to me this is relevant for blocking, so that's very nice. You can move better while blocking. And on the other hand, where I was thinking initially first, I think this will play a role, would likely be when you're getting hit by someone, you're getting into that walking stage until you can run again, a melee hit in PvP. And you will have the same free movement there now, I think, unless that is classified differently somehow. The maximum non-sprint move speed is increased to up to 4 meters per second. I'm not entirely sure how that will feel and impact different situations, but also relevant to know, I guess. And then there's an updated animation along with that, and an improved play animation when entering sprints from backwards dodges. So, very interesting change. We'll see how much impact this really has. Especially if this affects PvP like I think it does, this might actually be a lot more major than you would think from just reading this line here, because it would allow you to juke a fair bit better, I think. Then we have a fix to mutations. Inflamed was affecting some things inconsistently, and some AI fixes being here that we can actually skin elks now, which was limited to the owning faction of the territory, which was very, very random. We have a combat change here that was technically in the last season already, so I'm not entirely sure what is happening here. So it says acid damage has been changed to elemental damage type, so that it allows armor mitigation, but if you look in game, it's actually already listed there and you already have the mitigation value for it, so either it's just bugged or they want to let people know again. What they're saying here is that attacks directly from Janetian that were acid-based, like the Spit, Acid Ball, and Acid Spew, have now been adjusted to bring them back in line with the damage pre-change, but with variants allowed for armor weight. Arena-wide acid damage, such as during the Sandworm, does not allow armor mitigation. This is gonna be a bit weird, because if you're sitting on pads where you're hitting or getting hit by most of these things, you're usually not gonna be running a lot of elemental resistance necessarily, because you're gonna be running paddings, you're gonna be running chitin paddings, because you can go up earlier. So maybe this is just to counteract the elemental armor that you have that'll affect this now. But if they go too far with this, it might actually make the Sandworm harder, so we'll have to see where exactly they scale that, and also if elemental aversion works properly with it now, and so on and so on. So yeah, gonna be interesting. Then there's also a reduce the frequency of status effect flyouts to help highlight more important ones. This is gonna be interesting to see if we can better see what debuffs and stuff are actually affecting us, and fix an issue that allowed players to ride mounts while Heartrunes were active, which I guess is a detonate thing mostly. There's also a massive update to blocking, which I am somewhat confused about. So, in my opinion, and I'm not alone with this opinion, Heavy is in a very healthy state at the moment. I think Heavy is, through the nerf of medium Heavy, has gotten a lot more value, and that's the reason why I'm running Heavy at the moment. And it's not just that I like running Heavy in general, but I think it's in a very strong state where it has a significant amount of benefits compared to other weights. And of course, Light definitely still has benefits too. We can debate about medium here, but this seems to be like it's a significant additional buff to Heavy, especially because that is where I think most people are mainly blocking. So you can now hold block and aim while a weapon is sheathed to trigger the aim or block. So that's pretty nice. It's just more of a quality of life. If your weapon is sheathed and you're getting attacked and you instinctively hold block, then your block getting pulled out is a good thing, I think. So I'm glad they're doing that. They updated the heavy attack buffer windows to make triggering back-to-back heavy attacks more consistent. That is also great. It's very clunky sometimes when you just do the timing slightly off and then you just stand there not doing anything. So very glad they're doing this change. Very, very good. They added functionality that will reduce the block stamina damage taken for a short duration after blocking attack to help scale stamina damage taken in group fights. This I am okay with. I think this is fine. This makes sense because it's not so much for small scale combat, but rather for large scale combat, where sometimes a lot of people just jump you at once and your stamina instantly breaks, which always feels a bit stupid because, like, hey, I would have put on my block if I realized how much stab damage was coming all at once. So this kind of mitigation after the initial hit, I think, is good. Though this could affect some weapons in weird ways. So, for example, Flurry, which is kind of a stam breaker to some degree, might be affected negatively here, while, like, you're doing that first hit unmitigated, the other hits may be mitigated after that. So we'll have to see what impact that actually has. Going to be interesting as well what that means for Wind Chill, especially because this doesn't imply anything about only being for group combat. So Wind Chill currently, like the counter to Wind Chill is basically walking away, but it's also a massive stamina breaker if you're trying to block it, and this may slow that down a little bit. And then we have reduce the player's block break reaction duration from 30 frames to 15 frames. As far as I understand this means that the block break, like, you're free to do things even quicker after block break. They keep kind of buffing the block break state. Like they did I think, what was it? The first thing was that you can still... Oh, you don't get the exhaust effect, right? That was you can walk at normal speed. That was the main thing. And the big deal with that is, right, that that's the window where you punish a tank. If somebody's blocking the whole time, just sitting on block, then that is the window where you can punish them, and this window seems to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I see a problem here, for example, with greatswords, because greatswords are already, like, very tanky. If you play a right side greatsword tree, you already have a very significant advantage in small trades most of the time, because you can kind of just wait for them to attack, do anything, and you can counter that, and you can punish them with an attack that is automatically blocking at the same time, which is extremely rough to deal with. You need to know exactly what you're doing, and one of the things that you can do, of course, still is block break them in the right moment, and even that is difficult, especially with energizing counter. But this will further reduce the potency of that, I think, as far as I understand it. So yeah, a bit difficult, a bit odd that they're going so far in that direction with blocking. And now there are more other block changes here, like we're not done at this point. So block stability and stamina damage values changes. Weapons with lower base block stability had their base block stability slightly increased. Fair enough, you know, some had like annoyingly low block value, so it wasn't worth blocking. So this means that it gives some more value to blocking with, like, a rapier maybe. Weapons with higher base stamina damage had their base stamina damage slightly reduced. This is risky because this comes along with the other block break. You need those stamina breaking weapons, right? You need those block breaking weapons. Otherwise, you just cannot deal with blocks. And taking this away, they haven't specified how much it is, but, like, lowering this is just rewarding blocking even more. Attacks whose stamina damage coefficients were much higher than average have been reduced. So maybe that's stuff like Armor Breaker, which would be kind of funny because it's literally called Armor Breaker. Not sure if this is also some, like, big play to try and make Empowering Breaker better or something, but it's a lot. And then unified the stamina damage coefficients across all melee weapon heavy attacks. Also not sure in what direction. Does that mean they're just generally lowered? Gonna be interesting, because, like, previously, like, a Warhammer heavy was a concern, for example, if you're blocking, whereas a Rapier heavy probably was less of a concern, I think. Would be less stamina damage. Or a Spear heavy, I think, is also not that much stamina damage. There's still okay amounts, but there were definitely weapons that stood out in that regard, and now I don't know how this is going to work. So yeah, they should have given us some values here instead of just putting this out there. Maybe they will do that before the patch actually comes out. This is a bit It's a bit rough because it does sound like it's a lot. Fix an issue where players were forced into standing when attempting to crouch after an attack. Okay, fair enough. Fix an issue where weapons could not be sheathed when using the toggle aim and block feature, and fix an issue where swapping of weapons could not toggle off aim block when using the toggle aim and block setting. I don't know, like, I'm someone who uses heavy, I'm someone who uses block because, you know, there are use cases for block already, and I think there's quite a few use cases, especially with the last changes they did to block where you can block projectiles, even with weapons that are not with a shield, and just take part of the damage. I think there's a lot of places where blocking is already good, and I don't think it needs these massive buffs, but rather it needs people to catch on that blocking can actually be good. Of course, it's different in light and medium, but these changes that they're doing here, in my opinion, as far as I can tell, are mostly buffing heavy. And, you know, I should be happy because it's buffing what I'm usually playing, but I like games to be balanced, so we'll see how it goes. We'll test a bit on PTR. We have some changes to consumables. Remove the ability to use consumables from the inventory during combat. That already actually happened, so you just have to put it into quick slots now, which is very annoying. Remove the consumable heal mod PvP adjustments. Consumable now heal at normal amounts in PvP. This is interesting. This was one of the Season 3 changes that was aimed at reducing the pot meta a little bit, I think. This kind of comes in the light of some other changes as well, I think. And also probably in context of the realization that this just leads to any self-healing being significantly stronger. Pots going on to the background, but people found other ways to heal, I guess. Or life staff in that context also getting stronger. So they kind of went about this wrong way. I thought that the consumable heal reduction was a good idea. I still think it was fine. I mean, they still have the cooldown part, so it's still nerfed compared to pre-Season 3. I think what they didn't do enough at the same time is nerf other healing or buff anti-heal. I think that would have made this fine, but they just put in a vacuum. They just nerfed the healing consumables without nerfing other healing sufficiently. That 10% nerf, but that was barely even noticeable. So yeah, there was just not enough done to offset other things, and that's what the bigger problem was. Anyways, there's some fixes with artifacts. Auto passive, that's completely trash. Extra damage on stunned enemies didn't even work, didn't even matter, no one even noticed, I guess. And the Thirst got a fix up for the tooltip. The strike damage conversion has been removed from both the Inferno Fire Staff artifact and the Life Taker Void Gauntlet. I initially thought that this may be because of the dot issues, but with the later change here, that is definitely not the reason. There must be something else that's going on here. I thought that was unfortunate. I thought it was nice that they at least filled the niche of strike damage, even though they were not very usable in their current state. Now this is going to be weirder almost, I think, because now there's even less reason to, I don't know, maybe not, maybe there's not really any strike affecting things, but it just seems weird, especially with the fire staff. I thought that the strike part was the unique part of it, and again, with a later change that we'll see in a moment, it doesn't make much sense to me. Abyss and Life Taker and Inferno have like the conversion clarified as well, and there's a big change to the Ankh artifact. The heal modifier now also decreases lifesteal healing. So they're saying it gives a bigger trade-off and creates additional differences between it and the Blooddrinker ring. This is definitely affecting some playstyles. I know Biggie has been running a lot of leeching, lifestealing stuff with this. So yeah, if you're running leeching, cyclone with this is going to hurt absolutely. This is going to rein this in a little bit more if you're running that type of playstyle. I think that is not everyone, though. I think there are a lot of players who are just running shirking heals and Ankh and not any significant lifesteal along with that. So a lot of people won't care that much, but the super vampire build is basically getting reduced a little bit here. Which I don't know if that's the right angle. I think they should have rather tackled the multiplicative factor with Divine on the amulet itself. I think they could have just done some more outright adjustments. I think the biggest problem at this point will still be the healing received with Ankh if you have a healer, and that is again not being touched. So yeah, I think this is not necessarily a bad change, and I think the differentiation point here is okay, but I don't think that's what causes the main problems with Ankh in most situations. Like, there's a reason why everyone's selling it at Wars, let's put it that way, and not running light steal effects to that degree in Wars at the same time. So that's not going to change with this change. Blooddrinker gets a 5% bonus to all lifesteal healing while active. That's a relatively small value compared to what Ankh had. I feel like, especially considering the amount of damage reduction that you get in return, the punishment that you take for using Blooddrinker is still more significant than what you get for using Ankh. The consumable reduction is just much less impactful than the base damage reduction. If anything, I would say swap the two around between these artifacts, and maybe then then we'll have a conversation about it. 5%, but like you're losing 25% base damage. That's not damage, but base damage. I don't know. We'll have to see how this 5% really feels, but I feel like it's probably a little bit too little. But I can also see that they want to be very careful with any kind of self-sustain at the moment, so that may be why. When it comes to gems, we're seeing absolutely massive changes of all kinds. Like, this is fundamentally going to change the weapon meta in many, many ways. So first of all, we have the Onyx here, which like everything else, it'll always affect the Rune Glass gems as well, but we're just going to talk about the null versions. So the condition is you no longer only have this against targets with full health, but targets above 70% health. And the range is reduced from 15 to 30% extra damage to now being 9 to 18% extra damage. But the uptime will be so much higher that this won't matter. If you are someone who's like opening fights and just does that initial burst with a weapon, then this is going to be fantastic. So, for example, I like to open my fights with Flail most of the time, and I'm considering to maybe slot an Onyx on the Flail now, because that's not the weapon I usually finish targets with, but it's usually the weapon that I do the initial damage with when I'm going in. I have to check all the exact scalings to see how much sense each gem will make, but this is definitely a very, very interesting option. And then we see a very similar treatment, or even better treatment in my opinion, for the Emerald, where the requirement for the target is now below 50% health instead of below 30% health, which makes this interesting for both PvP as well as PvE as well, right? Usually in PvE, most people are running Diamond for the consistent uptime, but if it's for half of the enemy's health, then this is going to be pretty good uptime as well. So the maximum here previously was 30% and is now 16% instead. I'm not actually sure if it was ever 30% because as far as I'm aware, it's 20% damage against targets below 30% health. So that may be a typo in the first place. But yeah, so the reduction here isn't even that much. It's going from 20% to 16% apparently. And also added 1% to 5% bonus healing on targets below 50% health. So 5% bonus healing at a max tier gem. So this is also an option that healers can consider now. And a very interesting one at that too. I think Emerald is probably the most interesting contender. So I'm very strongly considering to possibly put Onyx on one weapon. So the one I engage with, and then put Emerald on the other one for what I usually clear out people with at the end when they're getting too low health. You have that kind of mid-gap between 50 to 70% where you don't get a bonus, but I think that's fine. That's like comparable to Opal uptime anyways, and Opal is going to get changed anyways. So yeah, I think this is already interesting, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. So this is just the small changes in comparison, but it's already big in itself. We have the Moonstone next. This is now the damage bonus while all abilities are on cooldown, and the value is updated from 11 to 20%. I don't really know where the ideal use case for that would be, and maybe certain weapons in PvE where you just have like a lot of cooldown downtime, but then you're just usually switching to the other weapon. In PvP, you kind of rely on abilities for a lot of your damage, so I don't see all too many places where most people would value this strongly. Maybe on a great sword, possibly, but I think there are better options overall that would be more consistent for most players. Retaliate, Jasper, is now working after blocking or taking a hit. It is a bit better insofar that they've significantly increased the duration. Previously it was 20% damage for 2 seconds after taking a hit, and I think it didn't count for blocking either, so any incoming attack will now proc it. And that could also make it interesting for Flail, especially because you can just block and then engage off the block. And then it allows up to 3 stacks now, instead of the previous just one stack. It used to once upon a time you have to get hit 5 times, but god, that was horrible. And then it reduced the individual stack values from 20% to a range from 8 to 24%. So you need to get hit 3 times to get the full effect. With the increased duration, I definitely see this having more value than beforehand. Apparently, as far as I can tell here anyways, this is still an Empower. There's no mention of that being changed, which is kind of making it weaker in certain builds. Like you don't want to put this on a Great X, for example. But where you can utilize the Empower, it could be interesting. It could very much be interesting, more interesting for any war scenario or anything where you're like a bruiser tank. You're just going to have very consistent uptime on this. And yeah, the duration is much longer, so that's fine too. The problem with this is always that whenever you're engaging and you're CC locking someone or comboing someone, you won't really benefit from it unless you get hit beforehand, because they're CC locked and they can't hit you. Opal is by far the most used gem. It's still going to be valuable because it's still going to be used on armor anyways, but on weapons we get the damage increase reduced from 15% down to 12% while the stamina is not full, which will probably result also in like 9 or 10% as a rune glass version. Yeah, I think there could be better options here now. I think that makes it a lot less appealing depending on your build and playstyle. If you have a build that quickly gets stamina back, for example, it's not that useful. If you have a build where stamina is not the focus anyways, and you kind of just sometimes have these phases where you see, again, CC locking someone and you have full stamina during that, then you don't get that much out of Opal. So yeah, I think that other options could definitely pressure this now, especially Emeralds, so that could be interesting. And then Carnelian is weird, because this is the calming Carnelian. Some people, I think, thought this is the tank Carnelian, but this is the one in armor, which makes for a very weird situation. So add a new functionality that increases the damage by 0.2% to 2% on the max tier to taunted foes per gem slotted. So if your tank has consistent taunt uptime, and you have, let's just say you have 5, you just have 5 in your armor, then you get 10% extra damage from your Carnelian, which I guess you could also rune glass then, which could be like extremely interesting for something like Sandworm, for example. But then again, Sandworm is not really getting taunted most of the time in most fighting situations, so it's weird. It's very interesting, but at the same time, who would want to use this considering you are giving up elemental gems? Like, as long as mutations are the way they are, I think people will want to slot elemental gems and not Carnelians. So yeah, maybe people will like slot 1 or 2 of these if they can get away with it, just to increase the damage a little bit. But it's a weird way for it to work. It also depends a lot on how your tank is tanking. If they have enough uptime on the taunts, because some builds just don't need that many taunts. They don't need consistent taunt uptime. Others have almost always up. So yeah, kind of weird, kind of interesting. We'll see what it means. And then the Sapphire has the scaling updated to scale off of int instead of focus. Sorry, other way around. I was confused by reading that. It scales off of focus now instead of int. So this is going to be a secondary option for healers, but it goes well beyond that. That's just surface level of what's happening with the gems. Because look at this. Conversion gem balance. Updated functionality and values of all the conversion gems. So this is a bit weirdly worded, and I'm kind of I'm trying to interpret some things here. However, I think it makes most sense. But conversion gems will now consistently convert 50% of the weapon damage to the element associated with a gem, regardless of their tier. So that's very straightforward. So even if you slot a tier 2 gem, it's gonna be 50% of the damage is turned into lightning or whatever. Easy. But that will now all scale with the weapon's damage to... it will scale all of the weapon's damage to int focus if those attributes are higher than the base weapon's attributes. Let's just look at the individual values, or rather look at the higher tiers. So, conversion gem values. For reference, single attribute scaling is 100%, primary scaling is 90%, secondary scaling is 65%, and dual scaling is 80%. Single attribute scaling would be a Great Axe, primary scaling would be Hatchet, and then secondary scaling would also be Hatchet or Strength and Dex, for example. Dual scaling, I think, is only on Greatsword with the Strength Dex scaling currently. So here's where things get really, really confusing. The tier 2 gems, as far as I can tell, are just not worth using anymore at all. Because at the bottom here we have a note. These will not dual scale. If the replacement attribute is higher, it will override the base weapon's scaling. So that would mean if we have a tier 2 here, if we go up here, we have the 50% conversion of the weapon itself at 60% scaling of int, then a weapon would only scale 60%, right? The other 40% would just be, as far as I can tell, they would just be wasted. They would not scale with strength anymore because the weapons will not dual scale. That's their statement here. So you would just have a lower scaling weapon by using a tier 2 gem compared to using a tier 5 gem, which is also going to be some interesting stuff for, like, it's going to have implications for, like, using tier 2 gems in fire staffs and so on. So that part is one thing. So based on that, as far as I can tell, you basically just want to use tier 5 gems. Rune Glass will scale at tier 4 levels, so you could possibly be wanting to run tier 4, or like look at the tier 4 values at least, but at tier 5, you still have that 50% elemental conversion, so half of your damage will be, say, on a Great Axe, it will be slash damage, half your damage will be whatever element you choose, and that scales 90% off of int, or 80% of a focus, which is still an insane amount for focus, because it means you can run like a blunderbuss and it scale 80% off of focus, which is almost the same as the 90% it would scale off of strength if you're just running as a offhand with a strength build, for example. So that alone is kind of spicy, I would say. So this effectively means that, especially with an int build, you can just run any weapon now. You lose 10% scaling, and you lose the bonus damage that you would get from a gem, right? You'd get the emerald damage or whatever on top of that. You lose that because you are using your elemental conversion gem, but you offset at least some of that damage loss anyways by having the 150 int perk, which, in my opinion, again, is one of the most broken perks in the game for how easy it is to get. So you're losing some damage here, but you're also offsetting that a lot through the int perks. And it's weird. It's weird insofar that if I want to have two weapons that scale well of the same kind of damage, then I may end up being better off putting an int gem on both of them than like trying to get a somewhat matching scaling between them. So say I want to run maybe like a spear blunderbuss or something, where you have some overlap, but then you also have some not overlap because you have like dex or something. I haven't done the numbers, right? But it's one of those weird things where they have some strength overlap, but it's not perfect. And it might be better to just slam in the int gem and just be like, okay, we'll just both scale 90% int, and that would maybe end up doing more damage. And obviously it gets more extreme the more the weapons are apart. Like a blunderbuss bow build maybe, right? A blunderbuss bow build where you have like one weapon that scales with strength and int, and you have another one that scales with dex. There is no dex gem, there is no strength gem, which would make perfect sense to me in the context of these int gems taking over and these focus gems taking over. So why not have the same for all gems, so people can just literally choose and combine whatever they want? But somehow it's only for int. Somehow they want people to run int, and so once again, their bias right there showing a little bit. Focus, obviously, as well. So, yeah, this is weird. This is weird for certain build combinations. I really want to see what this means if you're doing like a rapier plus blunderbuss thing, for example, because it says it doesn't dual scale. So would that take out both of their other scalings entirely? Is that what's going to happen now? Gonna be very interesting. I'm gonna be curious to see what direction this takes and what this means for the viability of strength and dex builds in general, if we're all going to be running int. But considering there are also the other gems that are getting significant buffs, it's at least, I think, not the only option at the end of the day, especially if you're just looking for maximum burst. Also kind of, I don't know, it leaves Abyss viable, because Abyss is still a bit higher scaling, and it has that extra passive if you are low on mana, so it's still gonna do more damage that way if you're fine with the perks, and the perks are good, so it's not really a problem. Spark of Mjolnir, which cannot slot a gem. Kind of getting griefed here, I think. Unless they will allow them to slot gems now, but they didn't mention that at least. We have the incompatible elemental perk restriction removed from gems, which again makes me think maybe they will allow the gem slot on the other weapons as well now, on the artifacts. They can always slot it into items with perks that have different elemental types. Flail gets a couple of fixes. So the Arcane Smite area could spawn offset when rapidly rotating camera while hitting. Fix an issue where the Arcane Smite ability did not show a damage type. Fix an issue where the Cured Flameland passive wasn't properly removing a debuff stack. Funny enough, that perk is already good without the debuff removal. I didn't even notice that, so it's only getting better here. Fix an issue where Arcane Vortex upgrade accelerated advantage was not applying a stack of haste to self for each target hit. I guess you can avoid Alacritus banishment that way. And fix an issue that caused Flail to appear extended if sheathed during an attack. What's weird to me is that seem to be a lot of things with the Flail that are actually bigger bugs that should probably be fixed. Maybe they are not mentioning this here. It's possible that they are getting fixed as well, and they don't want people to be able to abuse them beforehand more. I will tell you in this case, because I do want them to be fixed, and I do want them to be at least on people's radar, because some of them haven't even gotten a response on the Discord yet. So one of the bugs is that the haste on the Flail can permanently apply to yourself when you're using Vortex, Arcane Vortex, and it stays around like after matches and increases every time you do like a new arena match, for example. So that is a problem. There is multiple issues with Arcane Smite. On one hand, the effect that it applies, like the ground effect, can reapply CCs. It can reapply a stagger sometimes when you run into it. It can also reapply Scorpion Sting's pull still. That was an issue on PTR. That can still happen. I don't know what the condition is, but under a specific condition, it can reapply various effects, which can be very, very annoying. It does not seem to properly activate tech rolls after 2 staggers. You don't seem to be able to do that with a Flail. Supposedly, people have claimed the Arcane Smite can also stagger through grid. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not sure if that's something that maybe applies in combination with the other bug with the ground effect, and that's maybe what people think it's happening. I can't say for sure in that case. So there's a lot of issues. There's another issue that I currently cannot think of, but there's another major one that affects something on the Flail as well. So there are quite a lot overall that break things in various ways, which I think are probably more important than any of the issues mentioned here. So yeah, I hope they get around to those as well, and not just the ones that are listed here. On the hedges, they fix an issue that the hedge's final charge up before the last attack in the chain to incorrectly time the transitions to light, uncharge heavy, and charge heavy attacks. Okay. On the Ice Gauntlet, Ultimate Chill's description states that Pylon does not chill targets, and fixing issues that cause the health values for Pylon and Entomb to appear as 0 in the Mastery tooltips. Musket, fix an issue that caused the musket to reload after swapping from blunderbuss during rapid firing. Fix an issue that caused Powder Burn and Power Shot to become disabled after entering or exiting instances. Spear reduced the cooldown reduction from Javelin's refreshing precision upgrade from 50 to 25%. There was some broken like knockdown lock that was possible, though you could get out of that with a tech roll at least. So yeah, that nerf's honestly fair enough. I think it was previously increased, maybe in Season 3, if I recall correctly. Updated the Lifestaff Sacred Ground upgrade, Anointed Heal, to not affect consumables or lifesteal healing. This is the one thing they've never touched. And they said they're still not touching it like properly, but it's something. Anointed is the last passive on Sacred Ground, which increases the incoming heal by 50%. Now, Anointed is so good that I, as someone who intentionally goes out of their way to not learn to use Lifestaff properly and let other people deal with that, can tell you about this effect. Like, this is the one effect that I know about on the Lifestaff that has like broken a lot of things for a long time. It's a major factor, as far as I understand it, in what makes anti-heal so weak against life staff, because this 50% basically both goes above 100% healing, so any anti-heal works against anointed, again, as far as I'm aware. The real thing they should do, and they should have done a long time ago, is just reduce the anointed effect. It should not be 50%. It's insane, because it makes all of your healing so much stronger. It's such a no-brainer. It's why every life staff build is running Sacred Ground all the time. But this is at least a start, because this means if a healer is using a pot while in their own sacred, that will heal them for less. They're not going to be life stealing much, but the consumable healing is a factor here. Though ironically, even this affects other people more than it does affect healers, and it affects playing strategically more than it affects someone who's just standing in their sacred spamming heals in the most brain dead way. Because what you would do, as a strategical thing, is if you are low, you run towards a sacred, as a melee, and the sacred will not immediately heal you for enough to necessarily make you safe in a situation where multiple people are attacking you. But if you jump into the sacred and you pot, you immediately get that increased healing from the sacred, the 50% extra from the pot, which is an instant burst heal at that point, which is a lot. And those players, including me, will be affected the most, whereas I think life staff players will be affected comparatively less, because they will still be able to use their heals while standing in their sacred. Again, it's a start. I'm glad they're doing it, but I would much rather have seen them left the consumable lifesteal healing pot untouched as a strategical element to some degree, and just nerf the overall value and nerf the healing provided in general, make it 25%. Then suddenly sacred is not quite as mandatory and everyone is equally affected. Additionally, updated the life staff sacred protection passive to not affect consumables or lifesteal healing, and buff this value from 5 to 10%. So again, good insofar that it increases your healing, right? It increases the healing of your group as well. So the consumables and lifestealing are less affected here as well, which is a good nerf. But then they're buffing the value of the healing again, because they can't have any life step nerfs apparently. It's like, okay, we're nerfing your allies, we're nerfing them being able to use pots and utilize life stealing in their build. But you as the healer, your own healing, nah, we can't touch that. We can't touch that. You actually get some more healing here. Get extra 5% healing. Because as far as I'm aware, Sacred Protection applies to yourself as well. If it doesn't, then maybe I'm wrong here. But even in that case, you're still increasing the healing that you do to your group. So I feel like the 10%, the 5% increase here on your own healing, if you are a healer that is consistently healing a group, might actually be more than what you lose from the lifesteal and pots in most situations. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't know about this. I'm glad they're kind of acknowledging that they need to change something about the life staff, and they're kind of touching something a little bit here, but yeah, you guys need to actually do anti-heal properly. That would help. That would be a big deal. Pestilence has proven that can be done, but not every build is gonna always run Pestilence. Anyways, moving on. Void Gauntlet fixed an issue that caused the lifesteal from Essence Rupture to not trigger on every hit. I was not aware that this was considered an issue, considering this has been in the game for ages. I thought this was just meant to be an internal cooldown. This buffs anything that attacks quickly, and yeah, it doesn't make a difference for anything that only attacks slowly. I am not quite sure if this is a good change, because I think this will have quite significant implications. This is a lot more self-healing on anything affected by Essence Rupture. In PvE, this is absolutely massive. This is, I mean, Essence Rupture is already the second sacred, kind of. Not quite, but like in a high burst group, that it's a massive amount of heal happening. Now it's even more, and I can see this having a significant impact on PvP as well. in some situations at least. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I like this. It's good in terms of consistency, I guess, but I thought that the internal cooldown was also somewhat keeping it check. We got to some perk fixes. So omnidirectional evade was not applying the empower status effect, which was a problem. That's fixed. Fix an issue caused various perk status effects to could stack the duration on reapplication. This is interesting, right? Because this, I think, affects spear, perforate, that you could like restack over and over for debuff effects. This should no longer be the case, so actually quite significant implications here. Adjust the tooltips for perks that increase and decrease the duration of status effects to indicate that they affect the base duration to help the functionality. Yeah, well, maybe they shouldn't. Because then you have effects that like increase dot duration by 30% and suddenly these perks feel awful. So, or freedom, same thing, right? Like everyone's complaining about freedom all the time because of the way that certain other things were unaffected by it. Fix an issue that caused the Leeching Flurry tooltip to not show the correct value. We also have a nice economy change here that I think a lot of people will be happy with. Raise the Azoth cap from 1,000 to 2,500, which is very nice for crafting, just less annoying. Make it 10,000 for all I care. But yeah, Flint is now in the Stone family, sure, whatever. Territory booster tokens are now correctly provide the 2x territory standing while in Eden Grove. Rank 6 mentor chests now give tier 5 research items instead of tier 4, which significantly increases the amount of generated XP. These chests have their prices reduced from 5,000 gold to 2,000 gold. In other words, if there's a trade skill you don't want to do, it might actually be possible to do that through these chests now. I think this is the faction shop stuff. Adjusted the odds of rewards in the reward track, including making artifacts more likely to appear at rank 200 or higher. So basically, rank 200 was awkward because the uneven levels, so rank 201 and stuff, give higher chances to give artifacts. And rank 200 was lower in that regard. I thought that was intended to kind of balance out the race towards artifacts between people who haven't grinded the PvP track and people who are already rank 200. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. At the end of the day, them changing it now is fine because now people are on a more even level when it comes to the artifact grind anyways, since you've had some time to farm them. So yeah, maybe this is just a good change to do at this point. Especially with us likely getting more artifacts on the PvP track in the long run. Fix an issue that prevented Flail ability perks from rolling on flails granted from the PvP reward track. That's great, but there's still a lot of other issues with Flail perks. For example, them rolling as armor on shields, which makes no sense when, like the armor value, when SNS, the shield perk roll as weapon on shield. Them not naturally rolling on a lot of shields most of the time. They're not naturally rolling on certain flails. Yeah, this is just a surface level to... needs a lot more fixing. A lot more fixing for the flail in particular. Gear changes. A lot of stuff. The new expansion food now have proper recovery buff with a matching duration. Because sometimes, not sometimes, always that was way too short. Remove the vernacular referring to raising the minimum gear score because there are no longer minimum gear scores. It's always a flat value now when crafting. Fix an issue that caused the named Void Gauntlet Nathan's Hammer to roll with a Warhammer ability perk. A new version now has Shirking Lightning instead. I actually thought this was intentional because basically the flavor text is that Nathan is a terrible crafter and that's why this exists, but I guess not terrible enough. Fix an issue where if you crafted multiple items, one became a named item, you would not receive the other items. So that's very frustrating if you had that. Glad that's fixed. Fixed an issue that caused the Fisherman Light Armor to display without proper icons for the male player characters. Fixed an issue that caused some lower tier item perks to roll incorrectly, preventing them from rolling at the appropriate rarity. We have got a lot more here. We've added the artifact Endless Thirst to the loot table of the final boss in the mutated versions of Savage Divide, which was previously from the season track, last season of free track. And we've added the Tumbler Feetwraps to OPR caches, so at least a little bit of value for OPR caches here. There will be some more later down in these patch notes. You can only loot each of one of these items, and if you acquired them from the Season 3 pass, you will not be able to get them again. Kind of makes the Season 3 free pass a bit redundant, I guess, because they're gonna do the same thing again. Apparently, you're gonna have a new item that I expect to drop from the season pass because the quests are in Elite and Wilds, and if that's the case, then they will probably just drop it into Elysian Wilds in the season after as well, or in the next expedition. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a weird system. The old rewards felt a bit better, but we'll see if they stick to that. Reinforced Orichalcum Bow Charm now has the correct name of Empowering Explosive Arrow instead of Empowering Splinter Shot. Once again, bow bias showing here, because there are so many perks in the charm categories that are just all mislabeled completely and misnamed after very old perks from the release of the game, but they changed this one because one of them plays bow, so they noticed that one. Fixed an issue where tooltips would sometimes show scientific notations for values. Change the name generation for PvP trade rewards to accessories without unique names to include the attribute suffix. Makes it a bit more clear which ones are actually named items and which ones aren't, so it's good. Like the prestige shatter stuff and whatnot, I guess. Fix an issue that prevented the Covenant Faction Seal upgrade crafting recipe from appearing for rank 3 equipment. Game mode rewards. We are getting to the worst part of this patch. The part that sours everything else to me to a significant degree. We are improving the Outpost Rush rewards by guaranteeing that items given as a result of participation are loot biased. Items from level 65 Outpost Rush reward caches also now slightly improved gear score ranges for players. Good. You know, that is good. I like that. That's a good change. I'm happy that they're doing that. We originally wanted 3v3 arenas to be a more challenging space with additional value for the winning players. So we greatly improved the PvP XP and salts given by the mode in the expansion update. It was a successful change in that sense, but now our other PvP game modes are suffering. Oh, poor OPR. We are reducing the 3v3 arenas so they don't overshadow other modes as much. As a result, Outpost Rush and War will grant greater rewards. Look, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with them granting greater rewards. But you gotta wonder because there is someone on the team. Dave says he consistently plays arenas. Have they never compared the rewards outside of just the track? We are getting 2 arena chests per day with 1 item in it. And like, look, yes, I am biased here. I like playing arenas. I think they're fun. I think they're challenging. And I dislike playing OPR, which I think is a very poorly designed game mode. Because you can win it by going in a 5-stack and doing PvE and building up a base on the other side of the map. And that's like the most effective version of playing the mode, which is incredibly stupid. And I'm not just saying because I'm salty that other people are doing it. I've tried it myself multiple times just to prove that it works. It does work. It's so stupid easy. You don't even need to PvP most of the time. It's not well designed. Like, if you want people to play OPR, then just make OPR good. And people are finally playing arenas, and now they're gonna go back to OPR because of the rewards. Because look at this. This is so frustrating. This is so extremely frustrating as someone who was so happy that with the expansion we actually had short queues for 3v3s. We could even play pre-made 3v3s with relatively short queues at most times of the day because it was rewarding. And I'm so concerned that is going away because all that cross-mod stuff doesn't matter if you're playing in AP Southeast where there's only 2 servers. All of that is going to be entirely irrelevant. I do not understand their obsession, their focus on OPR so much that they're now actively like doing this. So look at this. Players hitting the maximum contribution in War and Outpost Rush will receive 5,500 reward track XP and 4,000 ASOS salts. 5,500, okay? It's also interesting that War and OPR are getting put on the same level here. I don't know about that. But sure, 5,500. Make it that way. That's fine. That's good. Okay? So, at the current rate, that would mean you'd need 2 arena wins and a 3rd game played to have the same level. I think 1 OPR with max contribution versus 2 arena wins and a 3rd played, either win or loss. I think that's, that's equal footing. I think that's fine. I think that's fair. Additionally, Outpost Rush now also gives 20 dark matter for maximum contribution players, and the low contribution tiers have also been increased. Okay, yeah, give dark matter to Outpost Rush. Sure. Don't know why we can't get that in arena at all, but okay. I'm okay with that. The maximum reward given by 3v3 arenas has been reduced to 1,200 XP and 500 salts. The other contribution tiers have also been updated in a similar fashion. Why? Why? Yes, I am personally very mad about this. Because this is just stupid. Because it's just so heavily disincentivizing playing arenas for everyone who's just not passionate about arenas itself, which will just massively decrease the play days, which I'm sure they're doing with the thought of, oh yeah, it's fine, they can just do crossworld. We cannot. Yeah, NA can do crossworld, EU can do crossworld, I cannot. And I would I would play arenas at these values. Like, I don't care. I'd rather play arenas than OPR. But like, this is probably worse than running faction missions. I haven't compared it directly, but which is also tragic. But like, now you need more than 4 wins to do the same thing as a single max contribution OPR. So you need at least 4 wins and 2 losses or 5 wins to get to the same level of PvP track. And you don't get the dark matter. You don't get a cache every game. You don't get multiple rewards on the cache. You don't get everything else that comes with Outpost Rush. You get your gypsum. And it just makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense. And I'm sorry that I'm ranting, but it makes no sense. It is such a huge disparity. Like, if you factor in that with an arena, you need to wait for the queue, you need to load into the game, you need to wait for at least a minute to actually do the whole preparation stage, which we still cannot skip. That would have been a great feature. That would have, increased people playing 3v3s. Just give us a ready check so everyone can just start fighting earlier. Then you have the post-match loading screen until you're back in the world. That's a lot of time consumed. And then you need to do, well, let's just say 5 wins, because to get above, it is actually 5 wins. 5 wins. If you're losing, you're falling behind significantly. Versus just doing the max contribution in OPR. How is that fair? How is that even? How does that make sense? How is that not a massive incentive for people to just go into OPR instead and play Bob the Builder? And why? Okay, people are playing more Arena than OPR now, I guess. That's the statistic that they saw. And they're getting fast progression on the PvP track. Which is, in my opinion, completely fine, because, my god, if you played in the first year, you did not get any PvP track progression at all, and they never gave us any compensation for that, so let us grind at a reasonable pace now. It's still slow enough. It's not fast by any stretch of imagination. If you're trying to get to the 100 track from 0 or from whatever level you were at, it takes quite a while. Like, it's not something that you can just deeply commit into and easily do in like a week. Like, unless, well, maybe, I guess, but very niche circumstances. Like, I know people who have been grinding arenas every day since the expansion came out, and not even all of them are track 200 now. So it's not that big of a problem. Like, I'm talking about grinding arena most of the day, right? I'm talking about getting arena capped. It's just, yeah, I'm going to stop rambling about this here, but I think this is such a bad decision. And again, I'm completely fine with them increasing the rewards for Outpost Rush and War if they want to. Like, I don't really care. Like, but just buff the rewards for arenas and give us more from the cache. Give us maybe like just a minimal amount of dark matter and don't nerf the salt. Like, what is this like anti-arena sentiment that they have? It's always about, yeah, like if you win too much, it's a huge problem. And it's not. It's really not. It's not game breaking. In the worst case, you're getting some PvP track progression. Oh no. Frustrated. Very frustrated. Okay, moving on. Influence race reward caches now roll items in a significantly improved gear score range that is in line with other PvP content, which they haven't told us what the new range for PvP content is, so that doesn't really tell us much. I'm expecting it's still significantly below running M3s for max level players. Influence race caches now also grant 10 dark matter for max level players. The dark matter is great. I mean, I've got like 30 caches stocked up at this point. I really hope they get that retroactively because they're just not worth opening at the moment. Problem here is it didn't state anything about the perks. And as far as I'm aware, the influence cache rewards are probably part of what is not getting any health perks on the armor. In which case, most of it is just not very useful. I can just double check that really quick. So we have like the Sovereign set, for example, and the perk buckets. And those perks, yeah, they do not contain health. They have, like, for example, refreshing, sturdy, and then it's the lower chance perks, and that's the random perks. They're also missing a ton of other perks, I think. They're also missing like protection perks, like slash protection, all that stuff. So all of the PvP related stuff that you would care about, these pretty much do not have. So even if they're higher gear score, you're probably not going to use them. So yeah, probably should fix that along with that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. They're not mentioning it here, so I'm assuming not. Aptitude chests. Dual crafting aptitude chests can now roll timeless charts, sure, whatever. Expansion aptitude chests should now contain expansion materials instead of a mix of expansion materials and older rare tier 5 materials. I like that because it just doesn't clutter up the inventory that much. Expansion aptitude chests should no longer drop depreciated perks or older rare tier 5 items. The content should be more consistent, unified, and should match the expectations as to what should drop. Crafting. We have added the ability to craft research projects. These projects are designed to consume some of those extra recipes, patterns, and music sheets you have lying around and will grant bonus XP to the corresponding trade skill. This is going to be very interesting. I'm somebody who doesn't do music at all, but I have stockpiled a lot of music sheets. Gonna be nice to see, or like gonna be interesting to see how much XP these will provide, if this is something that'll actually be worthwhile doing. The taxidermied blue-blooded barb and demonager items are no longer bind pickup. The Heartrune upgrade path has been simplified and the associated crafting recipes are no less complex. That's great. So Heartrunes will no longer require items like feathers, saltpeter, and will instead focus on the other resources in their recipes. This is a bit weird and so far that I felt like that was like the unique resource required per Heartrune, and it gave those items a purpose. Now I don't really know, like, what would you want feathers and saltpeter for, like, unless you're crafting bullets, arrows, I guess. And then gear score 700, Heartrune upgrade recipes have been simplified. Tier 5 refined resources requirements have been removed, and a pass has been made to lower the overall resource requirements. This is great. I thought that the pricing on those was stupid and unnecessary. And I think, as far as I understand it, it'll basically mainly be the gypsum now. I think there's no other requirement that was not part of these resources. I can check the recipes here real quick, but yeah, it's currently 25 runic voidstone, 25 mithra ingots, and those will be removed. So it's gonna be your Heartrune plus 50 gypsum ops probably, plus 75 vials of suspended Azoth, which are not very expensive at all. So yeah, maybe this might affect the price of vials for a while a bit, because people might be buying those. I'm gonna give you an early trading tip here that I didn't give on my Patreon for once, because this could be possible as something that we might want to use now, because gypsum ops, most people have a lot of gypsum ops. That's fine, right? So they clearly saw that people are not upgrading them to 700, because I did not do that with the current requirements. And now they're like, okay, well, we're just lowering the requirements, but now they're so cheap to upgrade that a lot of people might do it, so a lot of people will need a fair bit of vials. Not that many, but reasonable amount at least. Alright, description have also been updated for various items to indicate sources where players knows where to find them or looking for the recipe. That's gonna be good. It's gonna be helpful. Prismatic scarab tools now have their own category for mining, skinning, harvesting, logging tools. Golden and prismatic scarab recipes for the expansion items have had their Azoth cost reduced, so players can do 2 full crafts with a bank of 1000 Azoth on a tier 5 crafting station, which is funny because they're increasing the Azoth cap to 2500 anyways, so you can actually do 5 crafts. Increase the Azoth cost for perks on procedural expansion crafts from 15 to 150, sure, nobody cares. Fix an issue that prevented named item re-roll recipes from being searchable by name in the gypsum kiln. That was annoying, something like that fixed. Fix an issue where finisher had the wrong name at the kiln. The Arcana trade skill used to make jewel matrices now makes an armor matrix. I don't get that, because I think, well, because there's already Arcana parts for the armor matrix, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with that, but I guess it's some change, whatever. Somebody will figure it out. I guess it's just another way to make an armor matrix, maybe? I'm not sure. Gathering temporarily adjusted the drop amounts for mithril ore veins until we can place more in the world. Range is just generally increased. Here you can see in the new values, like it goes from 21 to 35, 22 to 44, 45 to 58 maximum. This is funny people on my Patreon Discord have pointed out that that's actually not the bottleneck. Mithril ore is actually not expensive on most servers. It's the same price as iron ore. The bottleneck on most servers currently is orichalcum, which is significantly more expensive. So if that is the case, then this won't change all that much. But maybe they'll just increase the orichalcum drop rate as well. I'm not sure. Refining. Players can now prospect silver, gold, and platinum ore to create a cache of gems. So I guess it's like a new salvage farm, kind of. The better the ore, the higher the tier of the gems they can get. I'm assuming platinum for tier 5. So I'm thinking this maybe works like the rare resource conversion that we have for a lot of things, where you can like, I don't know, make like wildwood out of ironwood or whatever. I've never used any of them because the cost ratio has always been so high that it didn't feel worth it. But I'm thinking this may be the same thing. Depending on what the cost ratio is, it may actually be worth it, which would be interesting, right? Because like platinum ore, yeah, it's used for conversion to ore, but I think there's a bit of an oversupply for all of these, so maybe this will actually be useful. Territory standing gains have been adjusted for expansion, refining, and crafting. Trade skills amounts have been lowered because you have a lot more XP gains from some of these. Weaving will now generate standing. It didn't prior. That's unfortunate. I did a lot of weaving. Notable fixes. Remove the mention of tier in the named PvP track potion packs, as it looked like it was debug text. Potion packs of the same type now share a similar name, but the players can reference the tier on the item itself. Yeah, sure, whatever. Fixed an issue that prevented taxidermized legendary fish from being salvageable. Fixed a visual issue with the Varangian Lieutenant Kite Shield. Ancient mining pick now correctly displays stats data. Fixed an issue that prevented players from making the regeneration serum if the ingredients were in the storage. Yeah, you had to put that in your inventory. Mounts get a lot of like, mostly just fixes. You can now walk with your mount, which is nice. The other stuff, yeah, I don't need to read all that out. It's kind of minor for the most part. It's like some glitches where you were able to walk in situations where you shouldn't be and something like stuff like that. And you now will see the mount name while summoning the mount. So there's actually a point to having a mount name because other people can at least for a moment see it. And there's also some improved mount cameras, so that should be nice. Mount attachments can also be locked and salvaged. And instantly feigning to summon a mount for certain circumstances now comes with a 1 second cooldown on trying again. I don't know why, but I guess it's because sometimes it like overrode itself in a weird way, so maybe that'll make that better. Feeding mounts will no longer give the warning after the first time, which was just a bug, and yeah, the name will show me when renaming. And then we have some more mount fixes here, some footstep issues, some die stuff, cameras, blah blah blah. Keybinds, fixed an issue with being able to set non-mount keybinds to the same inputs as mount ones. They should just allow double binds in general. I don't know why they're still not allowing us to do that overall. That would just make so many things so much easier. Yeah, the other stuff here is just a bunch more gimmicky, some choppy stuff with the stamina bar, blah blah blah, but nothing really major here, I think. Yeah. So nothing that's a big deal. We're getting more gleaming meteor showers, which is going to be relevant because we need a lot of those tokens for the winter event. Hopefully they make it comparable to just farming the world boss, but I kind of doubt it. They're not changing wild stems so far, it seems, which is interesting. I thought they were going to nerf wild stems, but it seems like that's not going to be happening. Then we have like, again, a bunch of minor fixes here. That's not really anything super important. Just quality of life stuff. And same here with some more quality of life once again. As always, in this section of the patch notes, we have some small stuff, but we have a nice one here. Influence races will now be rescheduled if they're active during server maintenance. So I think that one is something we should care about a little bit. If we go down a bit further here, we have some more quality of life improvements. But yeah, that's it. I am very happy with some of these changes. I'm extremely unhappy with some others, especially the arena one. I do not want Arena to die again. I'm having so much fun. Like, please don't do this. It's gonna be interesting what happens with the gems. Again, I would love to see them just be a little bit less biased against melee weapons and give us a comparable gem for melee weapons too, so we can just, for like strength and dex, so we can just freely choose and not always have to resort into int. Like, it's weird that it was int for years, but now it's even more weird that it's int, because now it's making a very significant difference. Overall, this is not going to be the final version of the patch notes, it's just the first thing they're doing. We'll see more later on. We'll talk about that then. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, click the bell. If you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. Get early trading tips for this patch in return. Thanks to all of my patrons who already do exactly that. And thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.